And again, to those who are not so tuned into the keywords of sustainability, can you just quickly explain greenwashing so that we don't miss out on that?
So greenwashing is the intentional misleading of customers around sustainability attributes. So somebody claiming that this is sustainable when it isn't, or it's something that everyone else does. So for instance, like you might say, oh, so our paint is free of lead. Mm-hmm. And all paint is free of lead. Mm-hmm. And so that's and when you're in the industry, you know that. And so that's sort of misleading to say it, and that this is like a special feature. So that would be considered greenwashing. And actually, that benchmark is moving all the time, so what was considered green 10 years ago, like in the past, we would have talked a lot about something being recyclable. And you're still hearing it quite a bit, but recyclable matters very little if you're not using recycled content in yourself. And so now you're seeing more and more products that are recyclable and recycled. So, and then the other like forms of greenwashing is like saying something. So overall, what we have to do in the overdeveloped world is to reduce our consumption levels. They're just completely out of whack. They're not sustainable. So if you see a business that ends up selling more because of a change to their product, then you could class that as greenwashing. So the perfect thing is you have a reusable container that you can wash and reuse, and that's been replaced with a single-use compostable container. So that single-use compostable container, even though it might be compostable, is actually going to end up using more resources overall than the reusable container. So that would be an example of greenwashing. If the company is aware, it does that intentionally. That would be the caveat I would put in, because a lot of companies think, oh, compostable is so much better. But whereas a reusable plastic container might be much more sustainable than a single-use compostable container. And it isn't black and white. That's where a lot of the confusion comes in.
I totally see that. So it's if I come back to my favorite subject, yoga, that's what it feels like to me when I kind of see some yoga classes that have the shape of yoga, but then there's so much over instruction and beat and quick movement. And so there is never that arriving at yourself, but just the end goal of satisfaction, like you're satisfied that you moved and you feel exhausted and you challenged yourself. And I often, maybe that's a little bit comparison to that for me.
You get lost in the detail rather than it's like, I much prefer to talk about the principles. People often will ask me, oh, is this better than that? Yeah. And the answer usually is, it depends. Mm-hmm. And unless you did a life cycle analysis between one product and another, it's impossible to say if one is better than another. But the principles of sustainable living are really helpful. So if what you're doing reduces consumption overall, then it's a good bet that the decision is a good one. That's the right way to go. And then also, that it is not harmful to the natural world or to humans. So less toxins, that's generally something that you can be fairly confident is a good decision. So those sort of principles I talk through on the website, but what you'll find is that people want quick, simple answers because that's how our societies are set up. We're used to that. And when you sort of say, well, it depends, you can see people, no, just tell me, is bamboo clothing better than organic cotton? You're going, well, and like that's where people tune out. And it's actually where companies capitalize, because they're very quick to tell you, our sustainable bamboo collection. Yeah. And then you want to convince yourself that that is a more sustainable choice. And so you buy it. Whereas actually, if you've perfectly good clothing in your wardrobe, that's actually way more sustainable than buying a bamboo collection garment or something.
Oh, I love what you're saying, because for a moment I kind of followed you down the rabbit hole and I thought like, my God, I don't know anything about sustainability as we're going along with the conversation, like you might have felt initially, and now I'm so glad that we're talking. It's just really, really simple, just be aware of what you're doing. Are you overusing the car? Are you, whatever it is, like, are you buying too much? Can you produce this at home instead of buying containers for it? I was just thinking about my yogurt. I love making yogurt. And so we don't have all these kind of yogurt
Pots.
that kind of go into the bin. And yeah, super.
And what you find is, I know when I started, I would make some decisions based on certain information, but then when I learned new information, then I just adjust those decisions, and that's perfectly okay, because like somebody who's making yogurt with plant-based milk will have a different impact than somebody who's making it with dairy milk. That will depend on whether that dairy milk is produced locally or whether it's produced abroad. And, there's so many factors, but most of us, I find, like when I go shopping, I do try and buy package free as much as possible. So I try not to get lost in the weeds of whether this packaging is better than that packaging. I just aim to buy package free as much as I can. I aim to buy as much organic as I can and locally grown seasonal fruit and vegetables. And then I just forget about the rest. Because I'm not going to know whether this tomato sauce is better than that tomato sauce. It's like, no, I'm just going to focus on the bits I know are more sustainable. And then when they bring in carbon footprinting on products, they'll put it on labels on the food products, then I won't have to do the thinking. And it's impossible to do the thinking. Like I said, you need a life cycle analysis. So why fill our lives with that sort of noise?
Yes.
Just if you think to yourself, how am I reducing my overall consumption of resources? And that could be water or energy or plastic or goods. If I'm doing that, then you're on the right track, and just don't worry about the small stuff.
I have a final question for you. Do you think sustainability is your spirituality or your kind of connection to whatever, the higher divinity, or has that become something for you that has taken on a higher power, so to speak?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's definitely fits. It clicks with me. It resonates with me. I've always had an issue with waste, like just not from an environmental point of view, but it just felt morally wrong to waste what you've been given. And so I think I sort of found my calling, whether it's divine, I don't know. I might find out at the end of my life. I get that answer. But I definitely feel much more satisfied on a spiritual level doing this work than I did, because I trained as a spatial designer and worked as an interior architect for 15 years. And although I enjoyed it, I didn't feel like I was contributing to something bigger than me. Whereas doing this, I feel I am, and it feels right. And I do, like living lightly in Ireland, I'm very lucky to be supported by some readers of the website, but they just pay for the hosting and stuff like that. I don't make money to live on from it. And so I'm not doing this to pay the bills, but I'm doing it because I believe it's the right thing to do. And I do think my life is so much richer and so much more rewarding doing this than it was previously, where I probably struggled to know what my purpose was. And I don't feel that now.
I love it. I know this is so off-putting when we talk about the divine or spirituality, because it's such yoga jargon, but it's I meant it in a way to reveal also that being in context or in contact with greater things often means like to look into the depth of your emotions and fulfillment. And that's all it is, like most philosophers from the West would have said something along the lines, I'm just trying to be a good human. And that might be, the extent of being in awe and aware of that we are not alone, and that's all that I would recognize in saying, like, the divine is just a connection or showing us that we are all interconnected. So
That's it, because people have such different definitions of divinity.
Wow. Yeah.
But I totally agree with you. I mean, I do feel more connected to to humanity, because, and actually I think that that's what sustainability, the challenge of sustainability and the climate chaos, is that we now are seeing how interconnected we are, that somebody putting carbon into the atmosphere across the globe is having an impact on us here, and vice versa. And so I think that it's actually, I think that might be what humanity is struggling with a lot, because particularly in the Western world, we have moved to individualism a lot. And I know we were talking, we don't want to bring politics into it. It's really hard not to, because our society is based on our political ideals. And I think that for us to resolve the climate crisis, we have to work collectively. And that's not something that comes very easily to a lot of people in the overdeveloped Western world. So that journey, I was saying, might start with reducing plastic or whatever, and it ends up with you having a heartfelt conversation with somebody about your concerns about your children's future, or what we're doing to the natural world, you know. So you don't think you're going to do that when you start reducing your plastic, but you sort of end up there. And it might sound unattractive to some people who've never done that before, but it's so much, you feel so much more alive, I feel.
Yeah.